I got a new microphone. It's really fancy.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name's Ariella. I'm a second-year medical student and I make videos about my life as a second-year medical student. Today I am going to do an updated Q&A, so I asked you guys to ask me questions on my community tab and also on the comments of my videos. So I just gathered together the ones that people asked me and I'm gonna answer them here today. I'm so excited to have like my cozy Christmas lights and just a cozy study space today. By the way, if you guys are interested in medical school content and other vlogs and things like that, be sure to subscribe down below and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy my Q&As so that I know what you guys like to see from me as a medical student. Last little self-promo, I started streaming little video games on Twitch, so if you guys are interested in watching those, I tend to just chat with my audience on there, so I think you guys might enjoy that if you want to just like hang out with me and chill. If you're studying and you want something to like throw on in the background so that it doesn't sound totally silent, I would recommend going over there, and I'm having a lot of fun on Twitch. Okay, with that out of the way, I think I'm going to pull up the questions and we'll get started on answering them. I have my monitor over here, so I'm just gonna be looking over here to answer the questions. Okay, so the first set of questions comes from Naomi, and Naomi asks, "Hi Ariella, I had a few questions. 1, did you do any internships while in undergrad? 2, what subject/specialty in medical school has been your favorite so far? And 3, were you a part of any pre-med/health clubs? Hope you have a lovely day and good luck with finals." Thank you so much, Naomi, for the good luck. Finals week has already passed and I passed all my classes, which is fantastic news. So starting with the first question, did I do any internships in undergrad? So I personally didn't do any internships. I know a lot of friends who did. They happened to be more in the engineering realm of school. Like a lot of my friends were engineers. I tended to use my summers in order to work at medical practices and not necessarily specific internships, but it kind of depends on the opportunities that present themselves to you and what you think you would like to do. I do always recommend that you try and have some type of clinical experience before you apply to medical school, just because med school admissions committees like to see that you've explored whether or not medicine is something that you truly want to do by going through with those shadowing and clinical experiences. That's not to say that you can't get an internship that is clinical, but personally, I just happened to go through like physicians in my hometown rather than trying to find a clinical internship, if that makes sense. The second is, what subject/specialty has been your favorite so far? And I've definitely had a couple that I really enjoyed. One of the ones that I really liked was allergy and immunology, and then I also very much enjoyed nephrology. We just did reproductive, gynecologic, and urologic health, and I really enjoyed the female reproductive system and OB-GYN. So those are a couple examples of things that I really liked, but we still have a couple more classes to go before I have a better idea of what things I might want to try out in 3rd and 4th year. The last question from her was, am I a part of any pre-health clubs? And no, I wasn't in any specific pre-health club in undergrad. I just personally didn't choose to partake in any of them, but they were available at my school and I think they're pretty much available everywhere. Okay, so next up I have a block of questions from Apfelsina. I keep messing up that name, so hopefully I got it, but the comment reads, "My questions are a bit all over the place, but here we go. How did you end up with the way that you study? Did you try different ways? 2, has any of the things that you learned through medical school changed the way you live your life? 3, what is something you learned in medical school that you wish everybody knew? 4, you are taking the evening off from studies, the weather is horrible so you can't go out, what do you do? And 5, do you think being a medical student during a pandemic will affect how you think when you start working?" Thank you so much for your questions, and I'm just gonna get started with the first one. So the first question is, how did I end up with the current way that I study, and did I try out different methods? And Yeah, I would say that I kind of just did trial and error until I landed on the thing that tended to work for medical school. With that being said though, every class is different and requires a different amount of studying and a different type of studying. So for example, I wouldn't study for any of the systems-based courses the same way I would study for anatomy, which is very heavy memorization basis, versus some systems-based courses are more comprehension. I'm constantly tweaking my studying habits and what things that I do in order to maximize efficiency when I'm studying. So it's pretty much always trial and error. The second thing is, has anything that I learned in medicine changed the way that I live my life? No, I'm gonna say probably not for this one, just because both of my parents are doctors, and so I was kind of exposed to the medical field a lot when I was younger. I haven't really gained any knowledge that significantly changed the way that I live my life or the way that I think. I will say though, I definitely sometimes, if I feel a little bit ill, my mind races to the worst possible thing that it could be that we learn about in school. You learn about a lot of weird diseases that are very rare, but for some reason come up on testing a lot. And so whenever I feel even just a little bit sick, my mind immediately goes to those really scary, horrible diseases. I think that's another common thing for medical students, is thinking that you have all of these weird things going on when in actuality you're probably just fine and you're probably just a little sick. This one I have to think about. What is something that you learn in medical school that you wish everybody else knew? I wouldn't say it's a particular medical fact or anything like that, but I talk about this a lot on my channel, and I wish that everyone knew going into medical school that the heavy emphasis that is placed upon your grades during the medical school admissions process is honestly not as important to carry over into medical school. You're gonna be surrounded by people who are extremely intelligent, and you might not get the grades that you're used to getting if you're a really competitive medical school applicant. And honestly, that's totally fine, just because of the way that medical school works. Your application for residency is a lot more than just your grades, and so I wish that I knew going into it that I didn't have to worry so much about my grades, and rather spent that time focusing on learning efficient study methods that would help me learn the information over the long term, rather than studying and kind of cramming for tests in the short term. That's something that I wish I knew going in. It's not necessarily a medical fact or anything, but I do think it's something to consider if you are planning on going to medical school. Know that your style of learning is probably going to need to shift. And remember that your grades from the beginning are really not as important as your long-term retention. Okay, you're taking the evening off from studies, weather's horrible, can't go out, what do? Part of it is sometimes I will film and edit these YouTube videos. That's what I love doing. I love creating content online. I just got a new PC and gaming rig, so I'm hoping to stream a lot on Twitch and play video games with my friends. I'll also do a lot of hiking. There's not a lot of great hiking in the area that I live in, but if it's a good weekend, I'll drive an hour away and go for a hike somewhere outside of the city. Something that I don't know if I've mentioned to you guys already is that I moved to New Hampshire because our school's going entirely virtual for the next 2 to 2.5 months. And I kind of had to choose between being alone by myself in my apartment in the city or moving up with my fiance in New Hampshire. So I decided to come to New Hampshire for these 2 months while we're completely virtual. So something that I like to do here is, obviously I like to go hiking, and also once we get more snow, I am a big snowboarder, so I really like to snowboard. So those are kind of the things that I do once I'm done with studying. Snowboarding, you can do when the weather is bad, because bad weather, snowing, is good for snowboarding. So I'm gonna count that one, but I know that's not exactly what you mean. So for the most part, I just chill inside, cook, play video games, film YouTube, stuff like that. Do you think being a medical student during a pandemic will affect how you think when you start working? So I think it's kind of hard to say, obviously, because I'm not in it. I know that the programs that we all go to learn from are doing a lot in order to help maintain the medical education during the pandemic. So they're really trying hard to not compromise any of our education just because we can't be there in person or be on COVID floors, etc. And so I personally don't think that it's going to change much of how I'm going to work in the future. just because in general, my education hasn't really changed that much to begin with. I was a big lecture goer, but I had plenty of classmates who never went to lecture, and their lives basically didn't change all that much once COVID hit and we went semi-virtual or mostly virtual. So personally, I don't think it's going to make a big difference. The only thing that I think might be affected is that my primary care skills or my clinical skills and my OMM techniques might be a little rough going into third year, but that's what third year is for. You get to practice all of those things, and I think that once you get some regular practice doing those techniques, it's going to be like second nature, so it won't even really matter. But I guess we'll see in a couple years. Next is Pablo wants to know how my classes are going, and do I have synchronous virtual classes with my teachers, or do my teachers just leave the content on a platform, and do I study in an autonomous way? So that's a great question. My classes went pretty well last semester, just addressing the beginning of that question. The second part of the question, most of our information is posted online synchronously, so you can attend through a virtual platform if you want, and then those lectures are uploaded later for anyone who doesn't want to attend synchronously. So that's me. I usually watch them at a later date at 2x speed, but the option is there for both of those depending on what kind of student you are and what you like to study. So that's just how things have been right now. I think that's probably how things are going to stay for the rest of this year, if I had to guess, although we'll see what happens when we go from our entirely virtual first half of this trimester to the next non-virtual, if they even decide to go non-virtual. The last little block of questions is from Apeksha. I'm so sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but she says, here's some of my questions. How do you like the 3 terms in a year? I've never seen any other school use it, but it sounds intriguing. 2, what is your curriculum like? And 3, how are you in terms of mental health and everything? It's been a crazy year. Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's been a crazy year. I'll talk on that first. I think if you guys were watching my vlogs from previously, you could kind of tell where my mental state was at. I was just getting a little bit lonely and a little bit overwhelmed being in my apartment all the time by myself, and it's a pretty small space. So I'm not gonna say that I was having like poor mental health problems. I was just feeling a little bit overwhelmed and a little bit burnt out in that space. And so now that I'm here, I'm feeling a lot better. I'm sure things will probably escalate as soon as school starts again because we'll be pretty busy. But for now, I'm doing okay. Thank you so much for asking. Okay, in terms of your questions about my school, so my school is on trimesters. I know that it's a big thing on the West Coast. I think some of the West Coast schools do trimesters. And then I also know Dartmouth College, I believe, does trimesters. So it's not totally unheard of. Personally, in my opinion, I really like trimesters for medical school, but I don't think that I would like them for undergrad. Medical school, you can kind of tailor your education, or at least the people who design the curriculum can tailor it to being trimesters. They can break up a trimester into 2 different courses if the courses are smaller, or they can use an entire trimester for one course. It allows for a little bit more flexibility, especially when you get into your systems-based courses. But for undergrad, since the education is kind of standardized and there's like a set number of topics that you need to know for organic chemistry 2, I don't really know if I would like trimesters as much, just because you're going to have to squeeze a semester's worth of material down into a trimester. So I'm not really sure how that works out at the undergrad schools. If you guys are at an undergrad who does trimesters, definitely leave your opinion in the comments below and let me know if that's true or not. I just feel like it might be a little bit rushed in undergrad because those courses are more standardized than potentially a medical school curriculum would be. Speaking of the curriculum, you also want to know what my curriculum is like, so I'm going to really quickly run through this. The curriculum for medical schools are honestly constantly changing. They change pretty much every year. And so I'll run you through what I went through, but just note that this is not necessarily what you would go through if you applied to my school and you went to my school, because things are changing. So first year, we're breaking up into 3 trimesters. The first trimester is going to be a foundational course that has basically everything that you would have learned in undergrad. So that includes your cellular medicine, your molecular biology, genetics, immunology, if you took immunology. Basically those types of undergrad courses. It's a in-depth review of what you need from those courses in order to be successful on the USMLE and be successful in medical school. Second trimester is our anatomy course, and so we did cadaver dissection anatomy or donor dissection anatomy, and we had a in-class and a lab portion. That's the entire second trimester. It's a very standard anatomy course that happens all just in that one semester. So that's something I think that's kind of unique about the school that I go to. I'm not sure what the split is, but I know a lot of schools will preferentially do anatomy over the entire system. So like you'll have anatomy basically the entire year, and you'll do a dissection of the organ system that you're studying when you get to it, rather than doing all your anatomy right in the beginning of medical school and then just doing systems after. I personally prefer it this way. I liked getting all of the anatomy dissections out of the way just because it kind of felt like a job having to go in every week and complete your dissection and do your teaching and things like that. And I don't know if I would enjoy coming into lab like once a month or twice a month, depending on, you know, what system you're in. So I preferred the way that we did it, but I can't really say compare one way or the other just because I didn't experience the other way. But that's what we did. And then our third trimester, first year, was cardio, renal, and pulmonary medicine. So we get 3 systems out of the way all in one trimester. And that was like really the first systems-based course that we had. Another thing to keep in mind is we also have our primary care skills and our OMM course throughout the entire year. So that happens each trimester, and you get a grade for that course at the end. That applies to both first year and second year. So moving on to second year, in the first trimester, we started out with GI and then transitioned to reproductive, gynecologic, and urologic. Another course that we took during first trimester was surgery. Surgery is not really my favorite subject, but I did think it was kind of interesting to see something a little bit different than a systems-based course. I'm not sure how many other schools have a surgery course, so that's just something that was like kind of unique. I don't really know how I feel about it because, like I said, it's not my favorite subject, but it was still interesting. So moving on to the second trimester, we have 2 more systems. So we have musculoskeletal / skin and endocrine, and then that's one course. And then the other course we take is neurology. And that's really our last big systems-based course that we take in second year. Looking forward to that. Don't know how it's gonna go. I know that we have weekly quizzes during neurology, and I'm really not good at weekly quizzes, so we'll have to see how that goes. And then, like I said, primary care skills and OMM transition throughout those entire 2 years, so I also have those courses. And then for the last trimester, we have a life stages course where we learn about pediatrics and geriatrics, and we also start gearing up to take our COMLEX level 1 exam and then the USMLE step 1 exam if we choose to take that as well. And that's basically my whole curriculum. Those are all the questions I got. If you guys have any more questions for me, definitely leave them in the comments on this video, and I'd be happy to answer them if you didn't get a chance to have your question featured in this Q&A. Like this video if it was helpful for you, and definitely subscribe down below if you want to see more of my med school content. Follow me on Twitch if you like to watch people play Pokemon on the computer, and yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!